Oh, what's up, everybody? Looks like we're here. It looks like we're here. What is up? It is Tuesday, January 3rd, 2020. Wait for it. Wait for it. 3. Whoa! 2023. Can you believe that? We have, there's going to be a presidential election next year. Well, presumably. I mean, I guess we're not sure, but presumably, if things go as planned, there will be a presidential election in a year. Doesn't that really? I feel like it was 2020 a week ago. Anyway, I'm Ron Placone. You are watching Status Coup. Hope you are well. Hope you all had a wonderful New Year's. Hope you're all having a good 2023. For those of you who got your resolution from me, I hope my resolution that I gave you is working out. I did a thing on Twitter where I said, if you respond to this tweet, I will give you a resolution based on no information whatsoever. And people responded to that, which was pretty cool. I told some people to grow tomatoes. I told some people to join that social club they've been thinking about. I told some people to talk to that person they've been wanting to introduce themselves to. Anyway, I hope everybody loved their resolution. We got a cool show for you today. I'm going to be joined by some folks. So first of all, Zana Day is going to be joining me to talk about the breaking news that's unfolding before our eyes with the House Speaker vote, which I think is still going back and forth. It's been multiple rounds now, and they still haven't agreed on McCarthy. So we're going to be talking about that, breaking it down in real time. First, smash that like button. It's a new year. It's a new you. Smash the like button. For a long time now, you've been letting the like button, honestly, kind of take advantage of you. Really, I mean, you're a good person. You're kind and you're warm, and you treat that like button very cordially. And you know what? Respect is something that needs to be earned. And for a while now, that like button has really just thumbed its nose at you. That like button has been like, I don't know, YouTube algorithm. I'm not going to actually like. You want to be subscribed? No, I don't think so. So really, the like button is taking advantage of your kindness, and I don't appreciate that, and neither should you. You know, just because you're a good person doesn't mean they should take advantage of you. All right, so you got to smash that like button. You gotta just be like, no, and then you smash the like button like so, and then you ring the little bell. You hit subscribe and you ring the bell to make sure you get notifications. You deserve this. You deserve this. And also, it is a new year, and if you are able, please do leave a super chat. We will get to them throughout the show. So we're going to be talking about the House Speaker. We're also going to be talking about, we're going to start, actually, in Brazil. So as you might already know, over in Brazil, something happened that has never happened in the United States in my lifetime. They elected a lefty, an actual person of the working class, president. That happened recently in Brazil, and they just had the inauguration for Lula recently. And here to break that down with me is somebody who, first of all, he is the lead reporter in Payday Report, which is one of the top labor publications out there. And he was in Brazil for the entire duration, for the whole election. He was there on the ground covering it. Please welcome Mike Elk to the show. Mike, what's up, buddy? Happy New Year, pal.
Happy New Year to you too from Pittsburgh. You know, Pitt's doing pretty good at basketball. We're now up at 27. You know, we got a big game today against UVA. You know, they're 11, so it should be good. I got comp to go to this Brazilian steakhouse, so we're going to go down and celebrate. But let's get to the big news, which is President Lula taking over in Brazil. Let's put this into a little bit of context for folks.
Well, wait. To start, and I don't know if you were going there, but just I wanted to kind of go start at the beginning and kind of give us a synopsis of everything that you experienced down there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot. I gained a lot of weight, so you don't want to hear about all. Had some.
I don't need to hear about every party, but
yeah, but the other stuff. You know what happened is I actually started studying Portuguese at Pittsburgh, at the Pennsylvania Governor's School, which is a public program, when I was in high school. And around this time, I started studying because Lula had taken over as president of Brazil. The dictatorship of Brazil fell in 1988. Lula was a trade union leader in São Paulo, working at General Motors. He helped lead a series of bold strikes against these major automakers that were moving into Brazil to bring down the dictatorship. The strikes were successful. He then went on to found the Workers' Party and ran in several close elections. And then finally, on the third try, was elected in 2002 and served 2 years, two terms as president from 2002 to 2010. Under Lula, you saw, poverty was cut in half in Brazil. He implemented programs like Bolsa Familia, which is a program designed to give, financial incentives to keep their kids in school and not working. Also, he increased the minimum wage there by 70%. And I think what was most dramatic in many ways is that in Brazil, public universities are free. So Lula doubled the number of people who could attend public universities and then implemented affirmative action. So you have a generation of people who really moved out of poverty, went to university, and were very invested in him. And so like anything happens, like capitalism has its way of reacting to that kind of thing. So in 2016, Lula's successor, Dilma, who was a former communist guerrilla who fought against the Brazilian dictatorship in the 70s and was actually tortured and in jail for 2 years, she was elected president in 2010, and served till 2016 and then was impeached by the Brazilian Congress because of just, political differences. Then Temer took over for 2 years, which was very hard, and Lula was expected to run again to overcome this opposition. However, Lula was jailed on trumped-up charges, so he couldn't run in 2018. Hence, Bolsonaro won. Bolsonaro, it should be noted, is a fascist in the most sense of the word. He was a former army captain who in the 1980s literally was found guilty of bombing places pro-democracy, to prevent the democracy movement, right? He became a congressman because in Brazil, if you are a member of Congress, you have immunity from prosecution. So he became a congressperson in the 80s and was one for many years. He was from Rio. A big chunk of his base is in the paramilitaries, the militias in Rio. What should be noted is that Brazil has a murder rate that's 4 times that of the U.S. So violence, and it used to be about 5 times. When I was there in the mid-2000s, it had the most gun homicides, second most in the world. Only place that had more was Iraq at the time. This was 2007. So there's a deep history of violence there. And what happened in the 2000s, starting really in the late 90s, you had these militias, which were former policemen, ex-policemen, some off-duty policemen, would take over control of these favelas, these neighborhoods. Now, favelas were sort of unplanned neighborhoods that over a period of decades sprung up in Rio, although, lots of people made money. And since, these aren't really navigable roads, they're twisty, windy little roads, they're hotbeds of drug traffickers hang out there. So there's a huge influx of drug traffickers, who have machine guns, and you have regular raids of police, where police, the military police in Brazil, will come in and kill. Last year, in the neighborhood actually where I was just a few weeks ago, they killed 29 people in a random shooting. So you have cops walking around, military police, with these big machine guns all the time. So that was really it's created a culture of fear. Culture of really being afraid of people, particularly black people. There's a lot of racial elements to this. 56% of Brazil identifies as Afro-Brazilian. There's, the Portuguese encouraged a lot more intermixing of races. So there's a lot of different sort of racial dynamics there, but still a lot of racism. And I think what ended up happening in these favelas is that these paramilitary gangs, these militias came in and started taking them over, and they kicked out a lot of the drug gangs. And then they started buying apartment buildings in these neighborhoods. They started doing, protection rackets. They started doing internet, service and gas service and ripping people off, really, and creating these sort of protection rackets. And if you look at the charts, and these people, these militias, have all been very closely linked to Bolsonaro. And actually, I studied at Puquio with a woman named Marielle Franco, who became a city councilwoman. She was a socialist city councilwoman, and she was investigating these militias and their dealings.
Where was she a councilwoman at?
In Rio de Janeiro.
Okay.
And she was assassinated by people linked to Bolsonaro that were in these militias. And if you look at the kind of political clout these militias have, these militias control areas of Rio de Janeiro containing 1.7 million people, right? So this is really almost like another state. And a big chunk of it is the areas where they do well, the militias, are the areas where the government hasn't invested in basic infrastructure and resources. Because they come in and they try to act like they're the state. I mean, they are cops. But what we saw in the election is that all the favelas that were controlled by drug gangs are not controlled by anyone. Lots of poor people living there voted overwhelmingly for Lula. Overwhelmingly. The ones controlled by the militias voted overwhelmingly for Bolsonaro. And this isn't a coincidence.
Do you think they were scared? Were they?
There was a lot of intimidation campaigns. There was actually political assassinations in the lead up of certain people in these neighborhoods. So there was a really deep fear, justifiable fear, in some of these communities. So to fight this sort of culture of fear, Lula ran on this campaign of Brazil vai sorrir de novo. Brazil is going to smile again under me. Everybody's going to have fun. If you went to his, I've never been to a political rally where I've seen so many people making out until I covered the Lula campaign. Every rally, there were like beer vendors, and it was like, people walking on stilts and people playing the drums and horns. And man, they were a pretty good time. I never had such a good time covering anything like that before. So, you had this big atmosphere, this culture in Brazil. Lula campaigned on, one of his mottos was Vacina, Picanha, Cervejinha, Lula, which means vaccine, steak, beer, Lula 2022. So he ran on this idea of everybody should be able to afford a little steak, a little bit of beer. We should be able to do all these things. And quite literally, in this very popular podcast, very, very famous podcast, Lula, right before the election, said, hey, look, one thing I'll tell you is that, and this is what he said, people that don't have any lovers in their lives, I mean, that's a sad place to be. Loneliness is bad. In my administration, everyone is going to date. And he made a joke about we're going to have the ministry of dating, in my administration, like everybody's going to get laid, right? And Lula is actually a widower. His wife died. Lula was in jail for 2 years. His wife died while he was in jail of a stroke. And he remarried to a younger woman, not that much younger. She's, like 15 years younger than him. He's in his 70s. And he married her Jenga, and they just threw a huge party in Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil, which was massive. They had almost every major act in Brazil play. It was a huge party. And at the party, they got up and they made out a little bit on stage. And Lula let it be known. So you had this sort of, that, he was going to be the minister of dating. So you had this real culture of fun around the campaign, of a different political vision. I mean, to say, hey, everybody's going to smile again, or Lula's going to make Brazil happy again, is a much better political slogan than Build Back Better, right?
Just a little.
A little bit, like, hey, imagine if Biden came out and was like, hey, everybody's going to get laid, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, knowing his history, that could be interpreted in quite a bad way, actually. But yeah, no, I actually think, honestly, if we're being, I think very kind of self-reflective, I think one could argue that that's kind of missing in the United States, kind of on the left too. Like there's sort of this element of like a lot of people. I think a lot of people kind of can sometimes get turned off by the left here, or what is left passing, because there's sort of this lack of fun.
Yeah, no, there really is, and there's a lack of a broader cultural force, behind this stuff. I mean, certainly there are left groups that have a lot of fun. We try to throw some parties and have some fun.
Sure.
But there's not that kind of dynamic that you had in the streets. I mean, I was there in Rio de Janeiro. I mean, the city shut down. People were dancing till 3 in the morning. You know,
Yeah.
pretty epic. And you know, this inauguration was particularly interesting because Bolsonaro fled the country 2 days before.
Yeah, he's in Florida, right?
Or Orlando.
That's where you go when you're a fascist and you get out of office. You go to Orlando. Where else?
In some ways, I feel like that's worse than going to prison. You
know, Orlando's. I mean, hey, there's some.
I mean, when the rich folks in Miami don't want you and you have to settle for Orlando, that's like.
I just think that's so hilarious that he's just down in Florida and they're just like, welcome to the land of Matt Gaetz. This is where you belong.
Yeah, and so you know he's there, and since he wasn't there, traditionally the outgoing Brazilian president puts the presidential stash on the incoming Brazilian president. But Lula instead had a group of regular Brazilians do this. This was never done in Brazil before, and actually had a local garbage worker do the job. Because a local black garbage worker probably is a much better person than Bolsonaro to do something like that, right? So Lula, I think, you know, it's really exciting what's happening there. We're going to be doing regular updates. I mean, you know, in Brazil, you have the landless workers movement, right? Under the Brazilian constitution, if you can prove that land isn't being used properly, you can go in and occupy it, right? And win the right to it. So 300,000 families have won farms this way, right? And this is a big movement called the Landless Workers Movement. They started emerging as a political party. They've been running candidates, and they've become very popular. So now you're seeing, you know, these new forces, economy of solidarity economics, forming in Brazil. And I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going to be studying there. Obviously, you know, we're an American labor publication based in Pittsburgh. But, you know, as a labor movement, we need to have a sense of what's going on in other places in the world. We need to be able to get ideas, and we are stronger when we know about these struggles and we know about what's going on, because some of them are quite bold. I mean, in Rio, you know, there were people, you know, getting killed. You know, there were people wearing red in the streets and getting attacked. A friend of mine, her mother, had a gun pulled on her in Copacabana for, you know, giving out Lula literature, right?
Wow.
So
is that why? I mean, they were kind of fearful of violence during this inauguration. Did anything kind of come to fruition over the past few days?
No, there were a lot of people arrested prior to the inauguration, and they did a pretty good job of clamping it down. But to give you an idea of how loud it was, like a right-wing congressman, right? Imagine like the Steve King of Brazil, right? Holds up in his apartment, and it's like, look at all these guns I have in case the government goes down. And so in Brazil, they have like an independent election commission. So, like, the Independent Election Commission was like, yeah, the federal police need to go there and arrest that guy. So they went to arrest him.
They arrested him?
Well, he threw grenades at them and engaged, wounded 2 federal police. This is like, you know, like the Steve King of Brazil, like a former right-wing congressman who was just, you know. So there was a lot of fear. And on election day, you know, they shut down. They had over 500 checkpoints set up in these pro-Lula neighborhoods. They were stopping people from going to vote. They brought out the military. They were beating people up. They were doing, you know, raids with machine guns. They were doing all kind of stuff to stop this. So we're working on a bit of a long-form project. I think it's going to be a bit of an ebook, you know, probably like a 30, 40-page book summarizing what all occurred. It might get longer, but, you know, we would love it if your readers, if your viewers would follow us at www.payday report, you know, like the day you get paid, paydayreport.com/donate. We need your donations. We'll spend it, some of it on basketball tickets, but most of it on covering strikes. It's going to be a strike up the road in Akron. So, you know, but this was, and you know, it's important for us to bring up, you know, we did over 20 dispatches from Brazil as an independent outlet. You know, I speak Portuguese, when most outlets in the U.S. hardly covered it. And here it is, you know, a union leader who was jailed takes over as the leader of the 4th largest democracy in the world, promises to get the climate talks restarted, right? Yeah. This is a big international story. And I just think in the U.S., you know, we have real issues with multiculturalism, both within our own country, but also in terms of understanding other countries. That's something we need to work on.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, and that's why I've really been looking forward to getting you on to talk about all this, because I know you were down there for so long. And, you and I have talked off mic just about what you experienced and how it just relates not just to what's going on in Brazil, but how it relates to just the worldwide labor movement and how significant it is and how we should all be kind of looking to that as, hey, this is something to learn from.
Totally. And I think that's something that we need to do. And we're going to be covering much more international labor and how we connect with those movements. Obviously, the U.S. played a very big role in getting Lula into office there, right? Lula won by 1.5 points, and Bolsonaro was going to pull the Trump playbook. But when the international community all recognized, everybody from Biden to Putin recognized the election within a half hour, really hard to come back. So instead, Bolsonaro, according to his Twitter, is hanging out at a KFC in Orlando.
It's like, you couldn't write that, man. You couldn't write that. The right wing fascist loses, so they go to Orlando to a KFC. It's just like,
you got to eat your emotions out, right?
Well, dude, thank you for all you did down there, and thank you for sharing that with us. And again, for everybody who wants to check out more, paydayreport.com. Mike covers labor issues all over the world, really, and especially here in the United States. He covers strikes and protests and labor news, and he's based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Him and I share the same hometown. So, Mike, before I let you go, I was wondering if maybe we could real briefly talk about something very, very tragic, but also pertinent to both of us because he is a fellow Pittsburgher, and that is Damar Hamlin. That's so for those of you.
I grew up playing football for many years here at Woodland Hills, which is a pretty prestigious program. I played quarterback. And, I haven't really watched football in about 15 years, but I happened to be in a bar when I was on. And I think it just goes to show that football is an unsafe game at any speed. The old Ralph Nader book, it's unsafe at any speed. This is a 24-year-old guy who nearly was killed.
Well, has there been any updates? So for those of you who maybe this isn't like ringing a bell right away, I'm sure you heard about this over the weekend. Buffalo Bills player Damar Hamlin was hit, and the way he was hit, it caused what's referred to as commotio cordis. Colin, did I pronounce it right? I've got to make sure I pronounced it right. Was that right, Colin? Did I screw it up? Me and Colin were working on the pronunciation.
How is it spelled again?
It's commotio cordis.
Oh yeah, commotio.
Commotio cordis. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Colin. Colin on the ones and twos, ladies and gentlemen. So commotio cordis, which basically when you get hit in the heart, if you get hit at a certain time as your heart is beating and in a certain moment in the beat, it can basically throw off the rhythm of your heart, and then it can cause cardiac arrest, which it seems to be that's what happened to this guy. Like, he got hit and he stood up, and then all of a sudden he just collapsed. And doctors are saying that's likely what happened. He got CPR right away, which can save you. The scary thing here, though, is they were giving him CPR for about 9 minutes. A human can only go so long without oxygen. So they did revive his heart on the field. But, I mean, as far as I know, unless there's an update that I'm not hip to, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. Obviously, you're hoping for the best, but it's so sad. And he went to the same high school as I did. He grew up in Pittsburgh or near
Central Catholic.
He went to Central Catholic.
Football
he was there. Yeah. Our school was a rival with your school in football, but he was there. He was there much more recently than you or I were.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this culture. I mean, this is a working class guy from McKees Rocks. This culture chews people up and they spits them out, and it's unsafe at any speed. I love to chat more, but I got to run to dinner.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. And paydayreport.com for everybody. Mike Elk, follow them. And thanks for sharing everything about Brazil, man. Peace. All right. So that was Mike Elk. Make sure you follow him. And a couple announcements. And then Zana is going to be joining me, and we're going to be following the House. And Kevin McCarthy, whether or not they go for Kevin McCarthy. Tony DeMeo, you say, should Rodney Dangerfield lead the Ministry of Dating? I think is Rodney Dangerfield, is he? Let's see here. Yeah, when did we lose him? Oh, it's been longer than I realized. We lost him in 2004. I knew we lost him, but I wasn't sure when. I was like, when did we lose Rodney? But yeah, I mean that'd be an excellent choice. I think he'd make a wonderful minister of dating. Rest in power, Rodney Dangerfield. Travers, what's up, buddy? How are you, Travers? I like this. Maybe Bolsonaro moved to Florida to challenge DeSantis in the primary. Who's further right between those two? I don't know. Let me know. Leave a super chat if you can. I don't feel like I'm hip enough to Brazil politics to say who is further right, Ron DeSantis or Bolsonaro. You guys know how I feel about Ron DeSantis. I think he is a theocratic fascist, and he is the most dangerous person in American politics by far. But how that stacks up to Bolsonaro, I'm not sure. I mean, what do you think? I'd be curious. Let me know your thoughts. And also a couple quick things before Xana hops in here. There's a little inkling, modicum inkling of good news. Dare I say good news? Joe Biden, and this is breaking. This pretty much dropped this morning. Joe Biden is re-upping all of his nominations that did not get approved before the year expired in 2022. So he's re-upping them for the new Congress. Now, there's some bad news in here and some good news. Some bad news, he's re-upping Eric Garcetti, who is the worst mayor in the country, I would say. He's the mayor of Los Angeles. Well, he was the mayor of Los Angeles up until recently. He has since been replaced by Karen Bass. He was an absolute horrific mayor here. And he got an appointment. I believe it's ambassador to India is the appointment he got. So he's been re-upped, and not a fan of that guy. But why this is a little bit of good news, who else got re-upped? Gigi Sohn. For those of you who have been following my stuff, you know that digital rights is a big thing to me. Gigi Sohn is the FCC appointment. That would be that third yes vote on net neutrality. So breaking, White House renominates Gigi Sohn for the FCC. The Senate should confirm her immediately. This is from Fight for the Future. This is an immediate release. So Joe Biden is going to re-up Gigi Sohn's nomination. The Biden administration has renominated public interest champion Gigi Sohn to fill the crucial fifth seat at the FCC. Digital rights group Fight for the Future, who led the massive online protest opposing the repeal of net neutrality. So Gigi Sohn should already be at the FCC. Without her, the agency has been effectively kneecapped, unable to reverse the disastrous policies of the Trump administration, restore net neutrality, address privacy violations, and ensure affordable internet access for all. So please, please, please go to battleforthenet.com, make your voice heard, demand that the Senate approve Gigi Sohn immediately. It's good that they re-upped her nomination. We weren't even guaranteed that Biden was going to do that. That did happen. That's a good thing. But now we need to get her approved. The FCC has been stalled in a 2-2 gridlock since the Biden White House. That's historic. That is inept at historic levels. Trump's picks were confirmed within weeks, by the way. All of Trump's picks within a couple weeks. Biden, it's been 2 years and counting. And why? Well, one, because Biden doesn't care that much, let's be honest. And two, because you got conflict of interest Magoo, Chuck Schumer in the Senate, who is a big friend to big tech. So now that she's been re-upped, we got to demand, you got to approve her now so we can get net neutrality back at the federal level. So a little bit of good news, little bit. I know it's a small win in comparison, but we got to take all the wins we can. So is Xana here? Are we ready to go over to the house? Do we got Xana? And we can go live to the house. I don't know if she's ready yet. But while we're waiting for her, I'll go ahead and I'll let you guys know where you can find me on tour. I'm hitting the road soon, actually, off and on to start. First of all, this Saturday, I'll be in San Diego, and it's a free show. Did you spend all your money New Year's Eve? I got you covered, San Diego. If you're in San Diego, come to a free show Saturday night. Find information and make a reservation, though, at my website, ronplacone.com. January 28th, Tucson, Arizona. Get your tickets now. That's a stand-up show and a screening of my short film Loner. But the promo code Lucy gets you discounted tickets. At checkout, use the promo code Lucy, and you get discounted tickets. But that early bird special ends soon, so get your tickets now. Don't wait, Tucson. Get them now before the early bird special is over. And Los Angeles, February 10th, April 14th, and May 12th. I'll be working out my 2023 hour at the Glendale Room in Los Angeles, which is also in the Glendale neighborhood, by the way. Tickets and information for all shows can be found at romplacone.com. And, of course, Tucson, don't forget the promo code Lucy at checkout. And, Colin, do we have Xana? Is she here? Is she ready? Is she with us?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Hopefully soon here. Give me just one moment.
All right. Well, let's go over to that tweet to kind of follow what's going on with the House in real time. I don't know if we've had any updates since then. So this is from Sarah Ferris. As McCarthy opposition grows on the floor, Dems are increasingly whispering two words, power sharing, per multiple members. Ours think no way, but Dems believe it could be a possibility if Kevin McCarthy keeps losing ground. So it's been three ballots, and Kevin McCarthy has not gotten all the votes necessary to be the speaker. Now, the Republicans, some of the Trump Republicans, they don't like Kevin McCarthy. They want more from him, so they're not just giving their votes. They're saying, like, no, we're not going to vote for you. So it's going to different rounds, and then if he's not approved, they need to nominate someone else. Now, if you guys remember, this is something that we were all encouraging the progressives to do when it came to Nancy Pelosi. We were trying to force the vote and get progressives to demand some concessions from Nancy Pelosi before they voted for her for speaker. And the big concession we were asking for, give us a vote on Medicare for all. Let's see where the cards land. A bunch of people say they're for it. When Trump was in office, a bunch of people were for Medicare for all because they knew that would get a Trump veto. Then all of a sudden, Biden is in office. Biden's against Medicare for all, but nobody wants to make him veto it. They don't want to make their guy look bad. So all of a sudden, people aren't too talkative about Medicare for all anymore. Well, we said, okay, let's hold the vote. Let's see where the cards land. Let's see who's going to vote for it, who isn't. Demand that from Nancy Pelosi. And it didn't go anywhere. It didn't happen. Well, here you see people on the other side, and they are demanding concessions. They're demanding concessions saying, hey, we're not just going to give you a vote. You got it. And I'm not sure what all they want, to tell you the truth. I guess maybe Kevin McCarthy is not conservative enough for them. Zana will have more to say about this. I think she's here now. There you are. What's up? Happy New Year. I can't hear you.
There we go.
There you go. You're here.
Is that better? Sorry, I've got my my new mic that my brother bought me for Christmas. Isn't that sweet? So I'm still trying to figure it out. I know he's a good guy. So yeah, let's just pick it up. So what is it that they don't like about Kevin McCarthy? We'll start on the Republican side. Is he not like conservative enough for them, or what are they wanting from him? Well, it was interesting. I felt like what was really telling were the speeches, right? Okay. That came right before this third roll call for the vote. We saw I'm trying to remember his name. Chip Roy. Chip Roy came up to speak from the Freedom Caucus. And to me, it seems like they're reading the room. And they understand that most Americans are anti-establishment, want to see pushback. They want to, his whole framing was, this is the first time we've had a debate. This is the first time Americans are bucking the party. We're bucking the system. We're going to drain the swamp. We're going to take care of the border. It was all your stereotypical, right-wing talking points about immigration and about excess spending and about how are we going to pay for it questions. But
which is the swamp, by the way. Like, right, that's all exactly. The swamp. So it's like they borrow this anti-establishment language. Meanwhile, they're just like an even worse version of the status quo.
And I think that's the key. And that's one of the things that we talked about, when Barbara Lee tried to run as the head of the Democratic Party caucus, and she got the cold shoulder, and people were putting her up to be the Speaker of the House in 2018. And we had 32 people in 2018, mostly progressives, vote against Nancy Pelosi, understanding that at that time, the anti-establishment sentiment in the country was huge, but it's still massive. And I feel like these Freedom Caucus members understand this sentiment, and they're really playing toward that. I think in some ways it's less about McCarthy himself, because really they're aligned on so many things. At the end of the day, right? It's more about the pageantry, I believe.
That's kind of what I have trouble wrapping my head around. Is like the GOP, policy-wise, like they're lockstep in tow, which, by the way, is what a political party is supposed to be. You're supposed to kind of be in unison. I mean, not like literally 100% all the time, but for the most part, you're supposed to be in unison on policy. That's part of the reason why our system is so freaking wrecked. We have, like an overtly pro-Wall Street party in the Republicans. They walk lockstep in line on policies. They make it out like Trump was something different. He wasn't. He just tweeted meaner. Policy-wise, he was the exact same as the GOP. He was no different.
Billionaire. I mean, supposed billionaire. A billionaire.
Yeah, like, what do you want? And then the Democrats, they have no policy because they're this quote-unquote big tent because there's no other option. So you have people that are completely politically, ideologically opposed within this same freaking tent, and it's a train wreck. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like it's the most, if you just describe that to a person who wasn't familiar with the United States, they'd be like, that sounds like the worst idea ever. How does your system work? And we'd be like, it doesn't. That's the problem. It freaking doesn't work.
You said before that there isn't two parties. There's really only one party, and it's the United Corporations of America, as Jordan said. There's just one party up there at the end of the day. At the end of the day, if you look at the votes and you really break down legislation once it's passed, all these representatives, whether they have a D by their name or an R by their name, agree on the same things. If we track presidencies over the last decade, we'll see that the types of legislation and policy. I was cracking up at Chip Roy talking about how, Biden's agenda against fracking and oil is tearing the country apart. When we look at that and we say, what are you talking about? Like, there was still corporate bailouts, and they feign about money going to Ukraine while they're trying to bluster up a war with China, right? So they're talking out both sides. But the Democrats love having the minority, because then they can talk about this rhetoric of working across the aisle, right? Shared power. And really that then they can just say, well, we had to compromise, when they just had the majority and we didn't get things passed. And it's a lot easier to campaign and to run on, once we get the majority, we'll fix everything again. So that's why the pendulum swings back and forth. But at the end of the day, I feel like all of this separation, this binary isn't a binary. They're in unison, but they're in unison for the corporations, for the oligarchy, for the hegemonic power structures, and not for the people.
Yeah. So, what is this like shared power thing they're hoping for? So it's been like 3 rounds now, and he still hasn't gotten the votes. Now, so like, what is this shared power thing the Dems are whispering about? Like what exactly is that?
It sounds unique because of the McCarthy situation, but if you look back at because of the vote for House Speaker, it sounds unique. But if you look back, it was similar things that they've said when Mitch McConnell was Speaker of the House, and he had overwhelming support for the Republican Party. I remember them still saying the same thing. They would say it's shared power. We're going to share the power. We're going to come to the table and compromise, and we want to work together. Yeah, they always say it regardless of this vote. they're right now trying to act like this is something new, but I remember them saying it anytime they've ever lost the majority, and they kind of love it because then they can vote for crappy legislation.
Well, they're celebrating right
We
now.
didn't have the majority. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, they're celebrating right now. Like they're celebrating everything with Kevin McCarthy. And I think Nina Turner actually tweeted this, and I thought it was like a really good metaphor. She just like, Democrats celebrating right now. It's like a team that's getting blown out completely, celebrating because they scored. It's like you're still down by a ton, but you're like celebrating because like you got what, like it's like nothing, like you're still. And by the way, like no one's resisting, no pun intended, no one's resisting Jeffries over on the House minority side. Like no one's resisting Jeffries, who is a bold opponent of anything lefty. I mean, that guy is basically Nancy Pelosi.
The entire squad and even the new progressives that have entered the House voted for Jeffries. And if you listen to some of the Democrats' votes, they were like the glorious. This is not exact words, but the glorious Hakeem Jeffries, and Jeffries is a neoliberal. Jeffries voted for corporate bailouts. He's terrible on immigration policy. He voted against the Violence Against Women's Act. He's voted in favor of dwindling social safety nets and cutting tuition for state colleges and universities. His votes have been terrible in so many ways. And just to hear him being praised the way he's being praised and it being called some kind of unity, when what's really happening here, they're so out of touch with us on the ground, with us regular working people, that they don't understand that right now, independents, which are the majority of the country, could be looking at the Freedom Caucus, and I'm hearing this, and we're seeing this, Ron. I know you've seen it. Looking at the Freedom Caucus and saying, "Oh, look, there is anti-establishment people in the House and in Congress, but they're not Democrats." It's they're looking at the Freedom Caucus people and calling them anti-establishment, calling them anti-war, when really these are just fascists that believe in corporate hegemonic control. That have read the room, understand messaging, and know how to manipulate the public right now into believing that they're the anti-establishment folks, that they're the ones on our side. And to me, that's one of the most dangerous consequences of what's happening, because I feel like mark my words, for the next 3 or 4 months, we're going to be hearing about how they bucked the Republican Party and how they're anti-establishment. Which I think is a dangerous rhetoric, because we're seeing people already leaving the left and going toward the right, and we don't need more of that.
Well, I always say this. Look, when you say the Democrats are not for the working class, you're 100% right. But when you go and you apply the pretzel logic to then say Republicans are, you've lost the frickin' plot completely. You've lost the plot completely, because that is like brain rotting pretzel logic. That's what that is. That is just brain rot level pretzel logic, to be like, oh, well, the Republicans are actually, I mean, we saw it during the whole railroad thing. They're like, oh, well, Republicans are looking out for unions. How? They all voted in unison against giving them sick time.
Yeah.
And the only reason any of them whatsoever voted for the other bill was because they wanted to just make Biden look bad. They were just playing politics. If they were actually standing up for unions, they all would have stood up for the sick time. None of them did. Republicans are looking out for unions. You're in a dream world. Democrats aren't either. But I mean, it's like I think that we are so desperate as a society because we just have this barbaric government blatantly working against its own people, that people create political fan fiction in their head.
Yeah.
One, out of desperation, and then you have other people who do it on shows for clicks. They know it's going to be popular. They know it looks good to have, oh, I'm going to tweet this contrarian thing where it's like, actually, the Republicans. It is like, there's nothing. insightful or intelligent about what you're doing. You're just hamming something up for clicks. No, and you don't actually believe Republicans are for the working class, or if you do, your brain has rotted out of your freaking skull. Democrats aren't for the working class either. Guess who's for the working class? Nobody.
Nobody. They're
We have
all
no
buddies.
representation.
They're friends when they're friends. When Biden said he's friends with McConnell, that's the truth. And Bernie, he's done a lot of good votes and he's done good things, but when he said Biden's my friend, he meant it. They on a lot of legislation, they will work together at the end of the day. And especially the neoliberal ones, you can hardly tell a difference between a neoliberal in the House whose name you don't know and a Republican in the House whose name you don't, or a Democrat, a liberal Democrat and a liberal Republican. These people that fly under the radar, their voting records parallel, and the legislation they support is basically the same. And so when you look at when you look past the rhetoric and you start looking at the legislation and the votes and the donors, they all have the same donors too. At the end of the day, the donors hedge their bets and bet on both parties, and they all have the same donors pulling the strings too. So we have that dynamic. But even today, I saw people posting, and I've seen these comments, from pundits. I've even seen it in mainstream. This concept that the Republicans, at least they tell us what they're going to do to our face, and the Democrats lie to us about doing good. But the truth is, where I'm from, Republicans lie about getting us health care, getting us jobs, they tell us the same thing Democrats tell us here in Kentucky. These are usually people that are saying this that are, in places like California, New York, maybe they are not exposed to it. But in the red states, they tell us they're going to get us good jobs. They tell us they're going to bring us health care. They tell us they're going to create tuition-free community colleges and get us jobs programs. They make
that?
Yeah. They make progressive promises to us all the time. It's just not realized. And so people around here think that they're going to do good. They don't run on, the immigration and stuff like that around here as much as they do other places. And that's true for a lot of middle America, where you have Republicans sitting in House seats and sitting in Congress, is that they will tell people, we're going to get you health care. Every American deserves health care. They say, you're going to be able to go to college and get a good job. We're going to bring good jobs. We're going to grow small business. They make the same promises that the Democrats make. Their flyers, you can hold them up next to each other, their mailers, and they'll be so similar in their language.
So getting back to the performance piece that's going on right now, what exactly do have what is it? The Tea Party, have they, or Freedom Caucus? It's the Freedom Caucus, right? That's the official. So what have they proposed? Somebody else who they want instead of McCarthy, and what are some of the concessions they want from him? Like how is he not far right enough for them? I mean, I guess I'm just curious, like what they're like. I know what they're trying to do, like in the kind of theatric sense, but what are they actually? Is there anything like specific they're trying to get?
Jim Jordan is who they voted on, and some of the folks like Matt Gaetz and some others have stated that one of the reasons that they're supporting Jim Jordan is because of his anti-war stance with Ukraine currently, which, as I said, we know that they are not anti-war. This, I am anti-war. I'm not for giving Ukraine billions and billions of untraceable dollars while people here are dying without health care. But that's not really their goal. They also say that they want to strengthen the border. A lot of it was actually said in the speech that Chip Roy gave about he was talking about the border. He was talking about fentanyl crossing the border, how money needs to be spent on that we need to strengthen our military. And so it's really about spending. It's that same classic Tea Party line about spending, which I'm sure Grumbine would have a whole heck of a lot to say about this, right? But that's their line. And the funny thing is Jim Jordan is voting for McCarthy. So they're voting for Jim Jordan, but Jim Jordan is voting for McCarthy. But that's the reason. Another reason is that they have said that McCarthy plays ball too much with Democrats. But they said their main reason is, the main reason that I keep hearing from all of them, is that it's time that Congress had debates again, and it's time that we get out of the two-party hegemony where they just hand a name down from the party and then everyone votes. So they are playing that anti-establishment angle as their main incentive for voting for Jim Jordan. They say that they're doing this to open dialogue, to show that it's possible. And honestly, Ron, I think that they're smart enough to know that Force the Vote did have a big momentum behind it, and that there is a large portion of the country that has talked about for a long time about bucking the establishment leaderships of the party and their disappointment in the squad and that zeitgeist. And I think that they're playing into that some. To show, hey, the Freedom Caucus are the real we're the real populist in the country. And that's a word that I've heard some of them use in describing their strategy here. Right. And so they're trying to pull that independent populist folks, some of the people that were populist who followed Bernie even to their side, I believe.
Yeah, well, that's a term that's been totally, completely bastardized in our politics,
for sure.
which is sad. But so you think at the end of the day, I mean, what I'm kind of getting is, would you say at the end of the day, this is basically just a recruitment strategy while the cameras are on?
Considering that they have had very few concessions, and most of what they're talking about is how, they shouldn't just toe the party line, and that they want to get rid of, they want to buck the establishment, they want to drain the swamp, but not really classifying, other than the two things I mentioned, which was immigration and spending, which are things that, as far as I can see, that McCarthy has been strong on from a conservative standpoint. Of course, I don't agree with him personally, right. But that's strange because him and Jordan's votes aren't, so far apart on that. It's not like McCarthy's a John McCain, right? McCarthy's not a moderate by any means. So he is compared to a Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe, but he's not. I would not call him a moderate by any stretch.
Well, I mean, I think this just shows how far gone this country is, where in any context, John McCain can be considered a moderate. That is frightening beyond comprehension. But I agree. That's where the United States is.
I believe him and Biden, if you look at McCain and Biden's records, they're almost identical.
Yeah, well, Biden's a neocon. I mean, people like it's like Biden is a neocon. Like that's legit what he is. And I've been saying this for like a while. I'm just like, when is it going to stop? Like, is it going to take like a literal Nazi running as a Republican and like Don Jr.
That's already happened.
It's already happening in Illinois.
Nazis in the House right now who are literal Nazis.
Oh yeah, well, that guy in Illinois ran. He was an open Nazi. He ran with the GOP. And as far as my other thing, what's it going to take? Don Jr. running as a Democrat. If you can tell me the difference politically between Bloomberg and Don Jr., I'm all ears. Let me know the difference. So that thing that I used to say in 2016, and people would roll their eyes at me, it already happened. It already happened. So I got
there is no left, Ron. There's no left.
Well,
the Democratic Party is right wing, and they're just as right wing as the Republicans. The Republicans have a lot of pageantry, and there is some really dangerous legislation. But the Democrats aren't stopping it. They're not fighting against it. They vote in line with them most of the time. We have no left. There is no left party in this country, unfortunately. And going toward the extreme right, like you said, as the solution, that's not the solution either. Going to the Freedom Caucus to throw a wrench in the system and be anti-establishment, you're just voting on fascism still. You're not making a change. And so, but that's what they're trying to appeal to. They're trying, because the thing is most Americans know this. Most Americans know that there is no left in the country. Most Americans know that there's no difference between the two parties. This is one of the things that I believe it's something like 89% of the country doesn't believe that there's really any difference, and that both parties are corrupt. So it's one of the most popular talking points. Yet the Democrats, because they don't want to, and because they don't care, and because they are right wing, they're not even attempting to reach that. And the sad thing is the squad voting on it and celebrating Jeffries, just like they gave Biden an A+ scorecard, right across the board. The Progressive Caucus is toothless. I mean, it's as toothless as can be.
Well, the only qualifier for that is you have progressive car insurance. Not a lot of people know that.
Is that right?
That's all it takes to get into the Progressive Caucus. If you have progressive car insurance, they let you in.
You got to be a fan of Flo, and then you can get into the Progressive Caucus. That's hilarious. There's no difference, and there's no benchmarks for getting into the progressive. You don't have to support Medicare for all to be part of the Progressive Caucus, for instance.
Isn't that so freaking ridiculous? I mean, and I know we're kind of like getting more into themes now, but whatever, that's okay. Like, I just, in other countries, like the conservatives support universal health care. Like it's just ridiculous. I mean, I think the most prominent thing, if you've never seen the movie Sicko, you should check it out. It's a really good documentary that Michael Moore did, where like when he's talking to that guy up in Canada, and the guy in Canada is talking about like, yeah, it's important, like everyone has healthcare, like I mean, we got to cover everybody, of course, like regardless whether you can pay or not. And Michael Moore goes, okay, so you're like a big radical lefty guy then. And the guy just looked at him like, what are you talking? Like that made no, like, not like of course I'm not, but like he looked at him as if to say, how is that relevant? Like it's as if the guy said, yeah, I like cheese. And he goes, oh, you must be a libertarian. Like, what does that have to do? Cheese is pretty universal. That has nothing to do. Like the guy just got, and he goes, actually, I'd be considered a conservative, but I don't know how that's relevant. Like, it's just not, and I know that in recent years in a lot of countries that is changing. They are politicizing healthcare more because they are some of the people on the right are starting to take a play out of our playbook. But fortunately, their citizenry is smart enough to be like, no, you're not. But
don't take away our healthcare. That's
So, but
and that's crazy because even poll after poll after poll since 2017, because I helped like lead some of the messaging for the 2017 Medicare for All push. The polls show, and this goes kind of back to this McCarthy vote too, the polls show that most Americans support universal health care. That's just something that's right. Even more than half of Republicans support it, polls show now. So people that identify as Republicans, but 70% of the country identifies as independent, and among independents, it's extremely popular. And so it's one of the most popular policies out there, yet not even the Democrats can support it. And so that just shows us that they're the same, but they're not. The Freedom Caucus isn't going to come out and push for Medicare for all, even though it's popular, but they will latch on to this anti-establishment. And that was one of the things with Force the Vote. Even if you can't get concessions, at least you're showing some pushback for Pelosi, right, like we saw in 2018, which put Pelosi's feet to the fire a bit. In 2020, there was none of that. It was straight across the board. AOC voted absent the first time. Cori Bush voted no, and so it's her first vote. And I was cheering and I was so excited. And then Cori came back in and voted yes. Granted, that's only one person, but the entire Progressive Caucus is large.
Yeah, and I mean, they could have made demands. They didn't. And I mean, well, so getting back to the goofy little today's performance. So if they don't settle this today, are they going to like nominate someone else, or is he going to have to give them some concessions? Like, what do you think will happen next? Because it looks like we're not going to have a conclusion today, right? Like,
I think, well, what's very interesting with this vote is that McCarthy lost 2 votes on this next round of votes.
Right. Like
this third round, he's like not getting them, he's losing them.
Okay,
He
I thought
lost
you meant he lost 2 rounds. I'm like, yeah, you mean he lost more votes too in the rounds.
3 rounds,
Gotcha.
and then he lost on the third round of voting today. He lost 2 additional votes.
Which is funny. I mean, that at least we got like that is funny. It's like, well, let's put it back up there. How did he do? Shittier. All right, we're gonna try this again. He did shitty and then shittier. But I think if we do nothing different, this is gonna change up. That's
But what are the commission? What I haven't even heard. At least when there was a call to action from the progressives that people were asking them for, is like bring Medicare for all for a vote.
Right.
Put people on these committees. I don't hear anything like that from the Freedom Caucus. I don't hear anything, and I may be missing something. So folks can correct me out there, but I haven't seen. We want these people on these committees. We want this piece of legislation brought forward. All that they've said is basically we spend too much money, and the border's in crisis. We need our border fixed, and that's it. But what's the policy? What's Jim Jordan going to do that's different than McCarthy? That's what's so interesting. So I don't know what their concessions would be, Ron.
Honestly, I think you might have nailed it when you're saying you think this is just a performative recruitment tool. I mean, I think your dog agrees. I think everyone agrees.
Thanks, Reed.
I mean, honestly, because that's the thing that I have trouble wrapping my head around too. Because it's like we've established, when it comes to policy, Republicans are hook, line, and sinker. They are in unison. They never really buck each other in the votes. They're pretty. I mean, you have with exception to someone like a Ron Paul or something like that, who I think does genuinely have anti-war views. With exception to like him and like maybe 1 or 2 others on occasion. Occasionally, Rand Paul does something like that. But outside of that, I mean, they are hook, line, and sinker on everything, on the corporate capture, on screwing over people left and right, on the war machine, and they don't buck at the end of the day. So it's like, what do you want from this guy that he's not offering you? And yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's like, this is just a good recruitment opportunity for them. I mean, unless there's some like really concrete, I mean, maybe like they're going to get some committee assignments or something, but it looks like they just want, like they just want to look like the outsider answer, which is, there's no such thing as an outsider answer sponsored by the Koch brothers. No. That's like that's like a grassroots movement sponsored by Walmart. Like, it's not a thing. It's not real. So
outsider caucus brought to you by Alec.
Yeah, right? So
and it's all corporatism at the end of the day, and it's all the same, but they are brilliant at messaging, and I believe that one of the ways that we've gotten away from that fire that was generated from Bernie, that fire that people like Nina Turner brought, is that there isn't the messaging, there isn't the rallying, there isn't the. I mean, these Freedom Caucus people, they do what we beg the Squad and others to do, which is use your big platforms, go out on the ground, organize, hold rallies, like do calls to action. They do those things. They're better at it than the progressives are, but also they know that they have more power in doing those things to a certain extent, because that's what everybody wants, what they're doing, who's on Capitol Hill.
Well,
because
they go to your neighborhood,
ultimately saves the hegemony. Huh?
Yeah, they go to your neighborhoods. I mean, it's like, I know you live in Kentucky, I live in California, but I used to live in Tennessee. So like I do have some experience with like what you're talking about, and like I do remember where it's like, the Tea Party has a hand, and also just the Koch brothers, they have a hand in every campaign from local on up, and they are in your neighborhood, and they are in your face, and they are like pushing their agenda, and they disguise it as like a grassroots thing, and it's very, very effective in so much of this country. Now, part of the reason they're able to do that is because they have the freaking money to do it. That's part of it, and that's a big part of it. But it's like the fact that I think the left and especially the Democratic establishment, which is not the left, but the fact that they don't do that at all, like it's not even close to the scale. Like that's how they're able to kind of do this, because it's like when you're just going to come off as just this disconnected coastal elite party, which is all that, I mean, when you look at the Democratic establishment, that's all that really is. These are just right wingers who just want to feel good about themselves. So they want to vote for somebody who's not going to say ridiculous things like Trump does. That's it. That's all it is for them.
Playing right into it instead of like challenging it or having an anti-establishment moment right now, doing something, bucking the system, pushing back against it. And instead they're celebrating and they're like, yay, there's pushback in the Republican Party. Look how disunified they are. Look at how, because they're so out of touch with people that Democrats right now and the heads of the Democratic Party are tweeting out and messaging celebration, and we're hearing mainstream media pundits celebrating. They're celebrating, feeling like this is a win. This is a loss, y'all.
They're still going to get their person. Like, Republicans are still going to get their person.
Yeah.
Like whether it's McCarthy or someone else, it's still going to be like oh, are they going to get us a shitty person or a shitty person or maybe even a shittier person? Like, what are you celebrating?
Right. And the Freedom Caucus gets to look like badasses bucking the system up there and causing the trouble, shaking it up. Right. Which a lot of us regular Americans kind of look at that. And even I am kind of like, man, even though I know the mystique behind it, I'm still kind of like jealous. I'm like, I wish that we had progressives up there bucking the system. I wish that we had, this going on right now. I want to see that, right? It's like FOMO a little bit. And even if I'm even feeling that, knowing better, that a lot of people out there are feeling it, but the Democrats are so, and all the representatives, I think they're all the same. So I don't really see Democrat, Republican. Like, I look at the policy the person passes and their votes, and to me, they're all the same. So all of them are just so out of touch. And these Freedom Caucus members are smart enough to use, because they may not be in touch with us, but they're smart enough to see the zeitgeist, right? Mm-hmm. They can see the writing on the wall, while all these other people are so out of touch with regular working everyday people that they're not seeing the writing on the wall, and they're actually calling this a celebration, which to me, it's a loss today for progressive, for leftist policy in general, for leftism, because where's our anti-establishment fight? And that takes us back to legislatively, like we were talking about the other day, local state legislation is important. So run for state houses, run locally. This tells me, again, it just sends that other signal up that the federal level, the House and the Senate, are useless. Mm-hmm. They're useless.
So, in other words, in short, if you were paying attention to the theatrics today and you came here, we had to give you the inconvenient yet true message that the professional wrestling match isn't real. Sorry we had to break it to you. Sorry we had to be the ones to be like, hey, guys, the wrestling match isn't real. And I know in the world of political talk, podcasting, whatever, you kind of have to pretend it's real. But I don't like pretending it's real. I'm not going to pretend it's real because it's just phony. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with professional wrestling. If you like that's all well and good. It takes a lot of physical skill, actually. The difference is
I want our Ric Flair and Macho Man Randy Savage. Where are
that's just they don't exist. I mean, and that's just fine. The difference is that this professional wrestling, this version of professional wrestling, A, takes no physical skill, and B, denies people health care and is causing war around the frickin' planet. So it's a little more severe, unfortunately. So let's go to the super chat/chats. Travers, what's up, buddy? Is that the Dems safe word, power sharing? Typical Dems being greedy and wanting two safe words. Ray J, Republicans will do a Hunger Games. Last one alive is Speaker. No, they got each other's backs. Those Republicans got each other's backs. The Democrats have each other's backs, too. They don't have our backs, but they have each other's backs. Michael, what's up? How are you? There is a big difference between the Dems and the Republicans. The Dems smile a lot more. I think it depends on who's looking. But I hear you. Nikki, what's up, Nikki? Thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Sicko is right on heavy side. Love y'all. Yeah, that's a great film. That's a great film. Although, I got to tell you something Michael Moore did. Here, let's get to the last one and then I'll tell you. Michael, we got another one from you. Somehow they always, yes, this is so freaking true. Somehow they always have just enough votes for the terrible stuff and are always just short on votes for any good stuff. Yeah, no shit.
Oh, true.
No shit.
Always.
Yes. And they are, and by the way, we always have just enough vote to not get something, to not stop a defense budget. There's always just enough present votes or just enough no votes to get defense spending through, to stop any type of progress. Always. It's always in one direction. Always.
And that direction is away from helping people every single time.
So I gotta say, and I respect what Michael Moore does. I don't agree with every take he has ever, but I respect a lot of his movies. I respect what he does. But the thing he did not too long ago that really freaking annoyed me was when that quote that he made that went viral, where he was like, I don't know if you heard about this, but he goes, he kind of got his soapbox and he was just like, I refuse to live in a country like this, but I won't leave. And it was like a big, like, grandstanding, like, hey, this is my country, I'm not leaving the United States, and people like will use that quote to be like, I'm gonna stay and fight, blah blah blah, and I couldn't help be like, that's a really easy position to take when you have $5 million. When you have $5 million, it's easy to say, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to fight, because at the end of the day, you're going to be just fine because you have $5 million. Tell the person
he has the choice to leave. A lot of
Americans
don't even have the choice to. I mean, they can't get a plane ticket. They can't. Some people can't even afford to get their passport processed. No joke. Heck, you can't even afford to leave sometimes a small community to move to a larger community to get better work. So that's one of the things that sticks out to me too, is like, he's like, I can leave, but I'm going to stay, and it's the same thing, that $5 million.
Yeah. I actually think more Americans could leave than realize they can, but that's a different topic for a different day. I mean, some certainly can. I'm with you, but I think a lot can and don't realize they can, but that's a different topic for a different day. Thank you, Tony DeMeo. Thank you, Nikki O'Brien. Thank you so much for your super chat contributions. You help keep the show on the air. Thank you, Xana, for going through the theater show today. It was I don't know. I give it about a 3. I mean, I wasn't really impressed with any of the performances. I mean, granted, I didn't watch any of the speeches, but I would give it a 3 on the 10 scale. I don't know. Where are you at?
I feel the same way. I think that we're going to be hearing. I think that it sets a tone before this house comes in, and so we're going to be hearing about these people that voted against McCarthy probably for months to come. And it sets a tone for the Freedom Caucus. So I don't know where they're going to take it. And I think it's about a 3 on the scale, because a lot of people aren't going to pay attention 2 days right after New Year. But I do think that the mainstream media will play this up, and it will set a tone going forward for a few months anyway. And one thing I predict is that the media is going to play up this dissent in the Republican Party angle to a point where people do believe that, the Lauren Boeberts are the rabble rouser rebels.
Jesus Christ.
So that I am not looking forward to.
Yeah, sure. Do you think McCarthy's going to get it? Do you think they're eventually going to settle on him, or do you think they're going to get somebody else who will be either exactly the same, or like what do you think's going to happen there?
I think they're going to vote on McCarthy, but it's hard to tell because they didn't ask for anything, like we were saying before. So like, what are they playing at? Like, and I don't know 100%, to be honest. Usually I can figure it out too, but right now I I don't have a prediction, which is rare for me. But I think McCarthy probably will get the votes. They'll play through this.
That's what I think.
And then they'll say they got some. He'll come out and he'll do a speech about how he's been pushed and he realizes that we need to take care of the border. We need to close the border down to prevent fentanyl from coming into this country. And he's going to say that we need to get our spending in check. And he's going to act like the rest of the Republican Party isn't that fractured from the Freedom Caucus. And then they're going to do a whole bunch of virtue signaling and McCarthy will be speaker.
That's what I think too. I think, and yeah, there's basically going to be some kind of concessionary bullshit press release that I don't know what substance will be. Well, there won't be any substance, but I don't know like what words will be strewn together for it. But you know, they'll issue some kind of we had this meeting and we are conceding on blah blah blah, and it's just going to be a bunch of nonsense. But people are going to be like, oh man, the freedom, like you said, like, oh, they're the outsiders. This is so, and he'll get the gig.
And then people are going to be like, we could have had Medicare for all if the squad. And then there's some people that supported, you know, the anti-establishment folks. That's my biggest warning with all of this, is because I already see it happening with activist organizers within the left community.
You mean that they're going over to the right because they think.
That's not, don't fall for that populism line. Don't fall for it, because these are corporatists. These are people without our best intentions at heart, and they're really good at theater, just like the squad. I mean, they're good at theater.
Whenever somebody has tried to make that point, and I mean, it takes a lot of patience to even respond, because it's such a ridiculous notion. But, you know, whenever somebody goes, well, who would have thought that, you know, like, and then they bring up some ridiculous Republican and they're like, they're looking out for working people. I always just, as patiently as I can, ask for a receipt. And I say, how? How are they looking out for working people? Give me one thing, just one. And usually the response I get is either something about the squad, which I'm just like, yeah, I'm disappointed with the squad too. But what does that have to? That doesn't answer my question. That's not my freaking question. My question was, how is the squad letting us down? I can answer that. My question was, how your claim that, you know, the Lauren Boeberts or whatever are for the working class. Answer that, because I don't see it. So tell me how that is the case. And they have no answer. They have no answer. They either
because
say
the squad let us down all the time. They're Democrats. I mean, they're regular old Democrats, which are Republicans at the end of the. Like I said, they're all the same. That's why you and I both support independents running and third parties, right? Because the system isn't broken; it's made for what it is. But I agree with you. Like, what is it? Okay, so if Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then if they say she's anti-war, then I say, well, she supports a war with China and a war with Iran, which she does. So no, she's not anti-war. She is anti the Ukraine war right now, which I am as well. But she's not. Look at the votes and read the room and look at their full policies is kind of. The look past the pageantry is the lesson for today in my heart. You know, it's like look past it, because they do this. They did this with the whole Trump dossier, Mueller report nonsense. You remember how theatric those proceedings were for that whole thing from both sides?
We had the impeachment performance piece. We had that happen twice. I mean, and honestly, I think another connection that we made is I think that they saw what happened with the railroad thing. And again, I explained to you how that's bullshit to say like Republicans had the working class back. They didn't. Democrats didn't either. Neither did Biden. Nobody did. They all sold the workers out, all of them. But some people applied the pretzel logic. Well, Republicans were actually, no, they freaking weren't. And I asked people for a receipt, and the only receipt people had, well, look at this thing Marco Rubio tweeted. And then he went and voted against sick time.
Yes, he did.
They all voted against sick time. You didn't have the unions back if you voted against sick time, which all of them did. All of them. None of them had the workers back. None of them. The Democrats sure as hell didn't. They sold them out to make Biden, to deflect away from Biden facing any heat. Biden certainly didn't have their back because he favored the railroad barons, but Republicans did not have their back either. Because anyway, Tony DeMayo, thank you for the super chat. Ron, watch Caddyshack again. It's been years. Last time I saw Caddyshack, I was in college and I was very far from sober. So yeah, maybe it is time for another spin on that one. Xana, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And where can everybody go find you? I know you're not on all the time, so where can people follow you?
I will start doing some broadcasts soon and some news from Bullhorn Bulletin on Substack and Bullhorn Bulletin on YouTube. So I will be working on some of those in the new year. So you can check me out there. You can also follow me on at Zeynab Day, ZEYNABDAY on Twitter, or you can look me up Zana Day, ZANADAY on Twitter, and usually find me because I don't think there's many Zana Days out there. There's a few of us, so those are the places, and yeah. Thanks for having me too, Ron. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. So guys, in closing here, and thank you again, Tony and Nikki, for the super chat contributions. Jordan is probably going to be back later this month. So I won't be seeing you on Tuesdays. I'll still be seeing you on Thursdays, but not Tuesdays and not Mondays. Right now I'm seeing you Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. It'll probably be going back to just Thursday here soon. I don't know when exactly, but our Tuesdays together are probably numbered. Let's cherish every sunrise. But anyway, this has been Status Coup. Kim will be on tomorrow. Tina and myself will be here Thursday. Follow Xana. For all of my tour dates, ronplacone.com. You know the drill there. And this is Status Coup signing out.